Drop that bass.
We need to talk about Perfect Dark Zero. In the years since its release, its reputation has become increasingly solidified as, well, crap, rubbish, a total misstep. A warning light flashing on the dashboard of Rare in its new role as an Xbox studio, a crimson flag waving in distress to signal that the magic that the studio had at Nintendo was waning. And no one can argue that Perfect Dark Zero isn't a deeply flawed game, which clearly had a lengthy and difficult development. Nobody sensible is going to tell you otherwise, and nobody with working eyeballs is going to look positively upon that bizarre choice of character model style, most famously represented by the internet's wall guy, this atrocious cardboard cutout of an NPC that featured in an early screenshot and who became an instant meme, and say, that looks awesome. Turning away from the eerie Blade Runner-esque feel of the original game's campaign to something more poppy and colourful, complete with a wisecracking 20-something Joanna Dark, was, in all honesty, a big mistake.
Perfect Dark Zero.
You shot me!
But here's the thing. Perfect Dark Zero wasn't completely terrible from top to bottom. In fact, at least 50% of Zero is absolutely bloody brilliant. Reviews at the time seemed to recognise this too, with a Metascore of 81, in an era, admittedly, when games reviews tended to skew higher than they do now, and write-ups that generally outline Zero as a bit of a mess that has multiplayer that manages to rescue the package, to quote Eurogamer's review from the time.
Kill traffic!
In this sense, the later reputation that appeared to veer towards Zero being a total unforgivable stinker is totally undeserved. You see, from the day the Xbox 360 launched up until the release of Gears of War a little under a year later, Perfect Dark Zero was the best action-based Xbox Live game, bar none. Even then, if you wanted specifically first-person online action, you'd be waiting even longer for something to unseat this. Awful character models, an ill-advised narrative, and uninspired mission design be damned. The multiplayer doesn't have to concern itself with any of that, especially as it was rather ahead of its time too, with up to 32-player matches and some very thoughtfully designed modes. While there were traditional deathmatch modes, as people had come to expect from these sorts of games, Zero's best stuff was actually hidden in the Dark Ops section of the multiplayer menus. Dark Ops featured the more offbeat modes, but these designs seem to fit more closely to the way Zero is designed in general, meaning the game's unique blemishes could more often be played as a strength instead of a weakness. With Dark Ops matches more focused on specific objectives, deeper than simply killing, controlling territory, or capturing flags, some of Zero's slightly swimmy and loose controls seem to make more sense. The dedicated dodge button, which whips the camera out into third person momentarily for a combat role, becomes more useful. The various weapon secondary fire modes suddenly take on a whole utility, depending on the objective. What is a priceless power weapon in one mode might not be all that useful in another. Basically, the game justifies its decisions better in Dark Ops than in any other section. Onslaught, for instance, was about attack and defense, so two large teams of up to 16 players apiece take it in turns to assault and then defend a specific base. This is a common sort of mode, but Perfect Dark's USP of multiple weapon modes changes how it functions. A laptop gun can be tossed out as a sentry to protect the base in classic Perfect Dark fashion, of course, but every team will also benefit from a dedicated sniper, not just for popping enemies from afar, but so that same player can use the sniper rifle's secondary fire feature to scramble enemy radar and flag things on the radar of allies as a spotter. The CMP machine gun has a useful rate of fire, but it also has a fantastic secondary fire, projecting a hologram of your character out a few steps in front of you. Hiding behind cover and not sure if an enemy is approaching? Pop the CMP's alt fire and push the hologram into the open to see if it takes fire. And even the most basic pistols have unique secondary fires. The Dark Ops mode starter pistol lets you eject and throw its magazine like a grenade, where, upon landing, it fires off all the remaining bullets in the clip in random directions. Always great for causing chaos and flushing enemies out of tight spaces. There's some delightful design here, and all of this thinking comes to its absolute zenith in Infection, the best of the Dark Ops modes. Infection is a 32-player, one-life-only match with the twist that, once you die, you're infected, and can spend your afterlife as an eerie, glowing skeleton hunting down the remaining living players. The infected win if all players are converted, while the uninfected win if they can survive while running out the clock. Living players get to buy weapons out of a budget at the start of each round, and managing your budget round to round is as important as anything else. Infection always starts off with a lot of chaos, as an initial tranche of less focused players are quickly picked off and infected, but over time a real sense of strategy emerges. Good players knew all the bottlenecks and safe zones of the maps. You'd often have a choice. Should the survivors try to create a stronghold and beat back the infected for the duration, or would they hide and sneak from place to place with a shark-like inability to stop moving? Often matches tended to crescendo in thrilling battles in the tightest quarters of the map. Regularly, the less skilled players would end up infected earlier, leading to the most skilled players in the game facing off against 25 plus raging skeletons in glorious one versus many showdowns. And what an absolute rush it was. So, Zero's multiplayer then was an absolute banger. But as the game turns 20 alongside the machine it helped to launch, with a bit of hindsight, it's even possible to forgive the campaign for being rubbish. Or at least for us to understand why it was rubbish. You see, Perfect Dark Zero is a title that actually began life as a GameCube game. Then it shifted to Xbox, and finally, in its last year of development, it was hastily HDified for the 360 launch. It had a troubled birth, sure, which perhaps explains how all over the place a lot of the game can feel. The stuff it nails truly lands well, though, and troubled though its creation was, at least we can say it shipped in the end. Which, of course, brings us to today, and to the cancellation of a Perfect Dark reboot.
I was wrong.
Reflecting on Zero, one can see how it might have been easy to kill a reboot. This is a franchise with a fractured sense of identity. Even the brilliant original feels like a game of 2 or even 3 parts, in fact. But forget all of that. In Zero's multiplayer, and especially in its Dark Ops mode and unique weapon designs, you can see the pathway to a Perfect Dark with a unique style, design, and attitude that could set it apart. But sadly, it seems the series won't be continuing to explore that idea for the foreseeable future. Warts and all then, Perfect Dark Zero shows us a world that could have been, and a larger series that should have been. It's also bristling with ideas, even if the complexities of its development meant that many of those ideas aren't properly or fully expressed. Sure, it was a little bit of a mess. Due to the very nature of a new console, many launch titles are, so Perfect Dark Zero should at least earn some respect for its ambition and some love for its limited successes. So let's all stop remembering Perfect Dark Zero as a completely crap game and remember it as a game that was actually 50% really, really good.
Sure. Chandra,
Let's do this.
Thank you so much for watching this little retrospective on Perfect Dark Zero's excellent multiplayer. Do you have any fond memories of Zero's multiplayer modes from back in the day? Let us know in the comments below, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games. Goodbye.